Hello, I'm David Hunter, and I am going to give you a demonstration today on GPRSlice how to plot what is called spline data. Now, this is a particular type of navigation. It's quite rare. Essentially, what has happened is a geophysicist has gone out into the field and has found that there's a whole heap of obstacles in the ground in the middle of his survey area. So in this case there were trees everywhere and there were rocks and things like that. Because of the trees, he wasn't able to use GPS navigation or total station navigation, and because of the ground obstacles, it wasn't possible to lay out a more formal survey grid with markers at a constant at a regular spacing, as one would traditionally do. Instead, what he's done is he's collected survey lines that are parallel and evenly spaced apart, but the starting and finishing ends of each survey line are at different points along the relative to the grid. So he hasn't actually set up a baseline at either end of the grid, so there's no fixed navigation point at either end of the survey line. Instead, what he's done is he's run a measuring tape perpendicular to the survey lines, and I'll just show you a brief example of how this works. So this is an example that I've just quickly whipped up in Google Earth, and the blue and the green alternating survey lines, and I've made them alternating colors to just show you the fact that it was a zigzag survey as well. So, and the red line here is the measuring tape. So this is an example of the layout of the survey grid. So he's collected data using a odometer wheel on his system. So we know the line length, well, we can extract the line length data from the survey wheel. And as he passed over the red line, the measuring tape, he has put in a field marker into his data set. So we'll be able to use the field marker and the survey wheel information to determine the distance from the field marker to the start and end of each line. So let's go ahead and do that. So what we need to do is, first off, we transfer our data, create our project as per normal, and then we're going to create a new info file. In this case, I'm just going to say 20, because it's the correct values. It's an X survey, or you could use a Y survey as per your own requirements. And then just click on the Create Info File. Now at this point, you'll notice that X1 column hasn't been updated. That's the column where we're going to enter in the survey wheel information. And X0 is the value that will change based on the... No, it's not, sorry. X1 will first load the survey line length values into this, and then we'll offset them based on the field marker. So we'll close out of here and go File, Edit Info File. First of all, you need to click on the manufacturer button, Get TS. So in this case, it's ERTC Get TS because the surveyor used an ERTC radar system. So your button might be different. It might be Sensors and Software or GSSI or something like that. So just click on that, and that will update the time window and samples per scan values based on the files. And then click on the ERTC Get XY button, and this is the button that will read the survey wheel information and import it into this X1 column. And do we want to round the survey wheel information to the nearest meter or foot? No, definitely not. There we go. So at this point we now need to save the edits and close out of here. Then we go Convert Data as per normal without any gains applied. And close here. Now the next thing you need to do is make sure that your field markers are accurate. So in this data set, just to give you an example, there's actually 3 errors there are 3 files with errors in them. And those errors are that 2 of the files don't have any field markers in them at all, and therefore, well, obviously we can't figure out the distance from the measuring tape based on those. So those files will have to be completely removed. And the other one actually has 2 markers in the file. So again, GPR Slice doesn't know which one to use, and therefore it can't calculate the offset. So we need to fix that issue first. If you've got a perfectly good data set, you won't need to do this, but it's best to follow along so you know how to do it. So just go to Navigation Markers and click on Field Markers button, and you'll see here the number of markers actually in the files is shown in this column here, and you can see line 3 has 2 markers, where we know we only need, or we know that there should only be 1 marker per file, because you're only going over the measuring tape once. And down here are the 2 files that don't have any markers in them at all. Now you can, actually before I was going to explain how to fix that, but I'll show you this first and then I'll come back to that. All we have to do is just click on this button next to the file, in particular the specific file that we want to edit, and just click on the Edit button over here, and that will display the radargram along with the 2 markers. Now I know from previous attempts at making this video that this is the wrong marker, so all we have to do is put your mouse over this marker until the cursor, as you can see there, goes completely white. If you're off even by half a pixel like that, it won't work. So make sure that you're completely over it, and then as you can see in the upper left corner of the screen, there are instructions there. So we just need to right mouse click, and it will put a red marker over the top of that field marker that we created, and you'll notice that the number of radargram markers went from 2 down to 1. So now this isn't actually applied at this point. All you have to do to actually apply the change is just close the window. Now it's still showing here as being 2. That's just because we haven't updated this menu. So to do that, all you have to do is click on the Field Markers button again, and there you go, it's fixed. Now lines 11 and 12. If we just display this radargram, obviously there's no constant bit of information in here that would indicate where the marker should go. So there's no reliable way of plotting this data. I mean, you're welcome to guess, and if you wanted to say that it was here, for instance, again using the instructions in the upper left corner of the screen, all you'd have to do is left click at this point to create a marker. But we don't want to do that. We want to actually we want to completely remove this file from the data set, because there's just no reliable way of plotting it. So we need to right click to get rid of that again. Close there. So if I click on Field Markers again, it should still have 0. Yep. Okay, so lines 11 and 12 are the ones that we need to delete from the data set. So if we close out of here, go File, Edit Info File, and we're going to use the radio buttons next to each file. So in this case, file 11, and then click on Delete. And you'll notice that file 12 is already selected, so we can just click Delete on that one again. And then we're going to click Save Edits as well. Okay, so that's all of the navigation markers issues resolved. So we now got a good data set. Now what we need to do is simply press this button down here, adjust to single marker at, and then there's a 0 here. If you wanted to, well, what this is going to do, if I just bring up the grid plot menu, this is going to shift all of these horizontal lines relative to the 0 marker line here. Now, if we wanted to, we could make that 5 meters, and it'll be offset by 5 meters. 90% of the time, if you've got no idea, if you haven't got any reference or anything like that, you don't necessarily need to have an offset. So I would always just keep it to 0 unless you know that you need to have it. So just simply click on that, and there we go. It's updated the X0 and X1 columns based on the distance to the field markers. So click on Save Edits, close there, and you can see if we go back to our grid plot, there we go, our X0 value is roughly here instead of all the way over here where it was before. Hi there, I had to just do a quick amendment to this video, so I've interrupted the previous section of the video to say that we've just done we've gone to our edit info file and we've pressed that adjust to single marker button. Ignore all of this is all changed since the last 5 minutes since 10 seconds ago, but we've pressed that button just now, and what you now need to do, if you don't need to reverse the survey lines, every second survey line, if you collected data in a zigzag fashion, then you need to follow the instructions that are coming after this brief interruption, and then come back to this. If, however, you're not doing if you collected all the survey lines in the same direction, so all traveling in the same direction, then you need to do this now. What you need to do is just go navigation markers and then artificial markers. Press that button, and then you can continue with your processing. I'm now going to show you how to, well, after this interruption is finished, I will show you, old me will show you how to do the reversal of every second radargram if you've done your surveys in a zigzag fashion, where if you've collected your data, for instance, your first line might be going in one direction and then your second line will be going in the opposite direction. Then you need to reverse every second line, and that's what I'm about to explain to you. But then after you've done that, you need to come back to this and press that artificial markers button and then go on. So yeah, sorry for this interruption, but hopefully that saves you from the errors that I had when I followed my own training video. So yeah, here's old me again. So now we've got another issue, as you can see. If I bring you back to Google Earth, you'll recall that this was a zigzag survey, and therefore every second line needs to be reversed. And at the moment, what we've actually plotted, the green dots indicate the starting positions of each line, and the red dots indicate the finishing positions of each line. So you can see that this isn't actually plotted correctly. We need to still reverse every second line. Interestingly, you can see though that there's this gap here in the data, and that's from where we deleted those two lines that didn't have any field markers in them at all. So we're preserving that gap in the data. That's intentional. You don't want to fill in the data set accidentally with data that you've collected from elsewhere. So it's important to actually import all of the data first, even if there are no field markers in the data set, and then go through the field marker editing menu and then go back to the edit info file menu. Otherwise you'll have these files. I mean, if we'd started off the survey and imported via the transfer data menu, if we didn't have files 11 and 12 in that folder that we transferred in, what would happen is when we go to create the info file, file 13 would actually end up down here, and file 14 would end up down here, and 15 here, and 16 and so on. So that's obviously not a good, that's not preferable. So it's important that you make sure that you're going through this process in that correct manner. Okay, so what we're going to do now is reverse every second line. So close out of here, and then go to the reverse menu and click on reverse. And by default, this menu will show, will have certain things ticked that's based on what you previously had ticked. So because I've made this tutorial video about 10 times before making this video, it's already pre-selected every odd number. But you can use these buttons here to choose which files you want to select. So if we wanted to choose, say, file 2, file 4, 6, etc., we'd just click on the even button. Or if we want to do the opposite, just click on odd. If you wanted to reverse all of them, you could do it that way. Or if you didn't, if you only wanted to, if you knew that all of them were, for instance, if you ran all of the survey lines from west to east except for one file, there might be one file that for some strange reason you decided to do from east to west, then all you'd have to do is just manually click on that file and only reverse that one file. But in this case, I have no idea which lines needed to be reversed or not. I'll allow the geophysicist that I'm making this video for to make that decision for himself, but we're just going to click on the odd button, and then we're just going to click start reverse. And there we go, and close out of here. Now if we go back to reverse and then reverse map, you'll see an updated grid plot menu, and you can see that these are the lines that have been changed. And then you can continue on with your slicing as per normal, or your filtering, your radargram editing, as if you were perform as you normally would. Okay, if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. I'm available on Skype. My username is Hunter Geophysics, one word, or find me on Facebook, David Hunter. I'm in the GPR Slice Facebook group there. Otherwise, find me on my website, www.huntergeophysics.com. Good luck.